afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful start to the 10th Zee Jaipur Literature Festival. Welcome to you all. In a few minutes, we will start our session, a book launch, Living with Tigers. Before we begin, can I please ask that you keep the aisles and the areas free. This is for your own safety. And please, this is such a beautiful venue and we need to keep it that way, clean. So please take your belongings with you, any rubbish. Please, after every session, we need to keep this beautiful place clean for the beautiful family that have given this over for the 5 days of the festival. Can I also encourage you to share photographs and content of the session via social media? Our Twitter handle is at Zee Jaipur Festival, Jaipur Literature Festival, #ZJLF. Thank you. We will begin this session very soon. Okay, so let's start this session. So it's the book launch, Living with Tigers, by Valmik Thapar, released by Chief Minister Vasundhara Raje, with readings by Sanjna Kapoor. Please, a very warm welcome. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have half an hour completely focused on tigers. And welcome to a very special book release for me. This book is a culmination of 40 years of my tiger watching in Ranthambore, Rajasthan. It's only about Ranthambore, Rajasthan, and I'm very lucky that my wife, Sanjna Kapoor, agreed to do some book readings because she doesn't normally say yes. And I'm even luckier that the Chief Minister took a little time off to release this book. And I'm going to say a few words a little later, but first, Sanjana to do some readings from the book.
Leaving the town, we followed a narrow tarred road that ran parallel to a range of hills, and after several kilometers turned off onto a dirt track. Slowly, the wilderness started taking over and the forest thickened. Suddenly, we were skimming along the rim of a deep ravine, bouncing and jolting over stony track. In front of us loomed an ancient, massive stone gate that must have once been flanked by fortress walls, long since crumbled. It was the royal entrance to Ranthambore, constructed to protect the domain of the kings, and surviving today to protect a treasure of equal, if not greater, value. Centuries ago, it must have prevented armies from invading this kingdom. Water flowed down the edge of the gate from a marble cow's head, encompassed by a shivling. A pool of water full of slithery water snakes had formed below the gate. As we moved beyond it, the air cooled and vegetation changed. So did the sounds, as the chatter of birds mixed incongruously with the groan of the jeep. It is truly amazing how birds are able to survive wherever there's a patch of forest and fill our senses with their song. Cresting a rise, we saw Ranthambore Fort, grey and massive, extending upwards from a steep cliff face. The sky was a clear blue, the surrounding forest a dull green, just turning to yellow. The huge walls glinted in the evening sunlight, looking for all the world as if man had decided to chisel a bit of nature out of the upper fringe of the rock, rather than disturb or fright it. Before I get down to describing my experiences with the wild tigers I have spent practically all my adult life with, I reckon it would interest the reader to know why each of them features in this book. I start with Padmini, whom I describe as the Queen Mother, a tigress who was calm, mature, and intelligent. I studied her as she raised her cubs. Akbar and Babar were the most curious and confident of the litter, but my favorite was Lakshmi, the smallest and weakest of the lot. The next tiger which makes an appearance in the book is Genghis, the master predator, who was a regular sight around the lakes of Ranthambore. He had mastered the art of killing sambar in the water, the first time this form of tiger predation had been observed anywhere in the world. Genghis is followed by Noon, one of my all-time favorites. She earned her name because rather unusually, she was at her most active in the middle of the day. Noon learned the art of killing prey in the water from Genghis. I then write about Broken Tooth, a big male with a gentle nature whom I observed for 10 years between 1979 and 1989. It also gave me great joy to get to know Lakshmi, Padmini's daughter. She was an exceptional mother, and it was a joy to see the special bond she shared with her 3 cubs. Then there was Machli, a star turn for all of those who visited the park. Suddenly, she died in August when this book was going to press, but holds the record for the longest-lived wild tiger in the world. Over the last decade, the practice of naming the wild tigers of Ranthambore was phased out, and they began to be identified by numbers. I write about T24, an unpredictable tiger, popularly known as Ustad. Other tigers who feature in the book include T17 and T19. Over the years, I must have observed and recorded the behavior of at least 125 tigers in Ranthambore. But the tigers you will find in the pages of this book are the special ones, the ones who taught me everything I know about tigers, the ones who, by letting me into their lives, made my own life truly worth living. Machli, the lake tigress. By now, the Rajbagh Palace had been completely taken over by tigers. Its cool surrounding rooms and shaded attracted the tigers in the summer. It was also a great vantage point from where to plan attacks. I started to call it Machli's Palace. Indeed, many locals believed that Machli was the reincarnation of a past queen. After all, in the good old days, the palace had been a pleasure garden where fountains played and royal retinue relaxed. Today, no one has the courage to enter. The rooms inside the palace were full of bones, and though I spent much time there in the 1970s watching birds, I would hesitate to enter it now. Today, the wilderness has encompassed it, making it a true tiger's den. Once in 2009, Machli's sub-adult cub was lazing around in one of the chhatris. In their never-ending quest for succulent plants, sambar grazed in the shallow water on the edge of the lake. One of the sambar began approaching the corner where the tiger rested, unaware of the predator's presence 16 feet above. The splashing alerted the tiger. It crouched, and as the sambar came into range, the tiger leapt from the chhatri, bringing the deer down and into the water. After a brief struggle, the sambar succumbed. The sub-adult dragged it out to feed. It was truly a palace kill, and something I have never seen again. For me, such encounters are the stuff that dreams are made of. Sunset on the lake, tigers jumping out of palaces to kill deer. If Jogi Mahal was not a day shelter with a chowkidar guarding it, the same scenes would be happening there. I know that the staff there have watched Machli and her cubs explore the terrace and balcony of the structure and mark the edges with their scent as if they owned it. Another favorite spot for tigers was an ancient gate close to Jogi Mahal, which had a room towards the top. Machli would enter this room and peer out. A board nearby said, "Protected Monument Archaeological Survey." If only they could see how effectively their monuments were being used and protected. Choti Chhatri and Badi Chhatri were being vantage points, and nearly every ruin was used by the lake tigers. The old masjids were sometimes used as day shelters, and this connection between the memories of man and the tiger was more than magical to observe. These ruins framed the tiger who sat in them, just as they must have humans centuries ago. Muchli enjoyed taking her cubs to the main road below the ramparts of the fort. One afternoon in 2008, while we were driving to the main entrance, one of her cubs was strolling on the road. Of Muchli, there was no sign. She was probably a few hundred meters ahead. The cub was very confident and carefully sniffed and marked the 1 kilometer milestone. As she moved away, a motorcycle carrying 2 adults and 4 children approached from the other side. 6 people on one motorbike. For a moment, the tigress, the motorbike passengers, and all of us in the jeep were frozen in shock. What on earth would happen next? Then, realizing their predicament, the man leapt off his bike and started running backwards with his family. Worried about abandoning his bike, he called out to us to bring him the keys. The tigress watched. Little children running on the road ahead, some 50 feet away from her, did not affect the tigress's cool demeanor. She continued walking, pushing along oncoming traffic into reverse, creating complete confusion. She then left the road, and we saw the man rushing back to retrieve his bike and move towards the fort to pick up his family. The tigress returned to the main road a few minutes later and walked on. At the same time, the man with the motorcycle was returning with his family, believing that the coast was clear. Seeing his error, he rapidly retraced his steps. I noticed that the seat cover of the motorcycle was a fake tiger stripe design. By this time, we were in splits of laughter in the jeep. Where on earth could you witness a scene like this? Only the tigers of Ranthambore could be as gentle as they were with such human activity. When nearly 10 tigers were relocated to Sariska, the dynamics of the tiger territories in Ranthambore changed completely. I'm not clear how exactly it affected Muchli, except it was around this time, in 2010, that she was pushed out of much of her old territory by her daughter, T17. She lived on the edges of Malik Talao and Lakarda. By 2012, she had no canines, but still managed to chase and kill her prey. She did this by choking her prey. She would keep her grip on them for up to 20 minutes, as her canines could not do the job. This was when pressure was applied on the park authorities by those who wanted to see this star tigress be immortal. Soon, Muchli's diet was supplemented by live buffalo baits. Slowly, this queen of the lakes got relegated to a small ravine in Lakarda. There was a lack of grace and elegance to the process. One of Ranthambore's finest was being kept alive for the world to see, but in completely unnatural circumstances. Should this be done? Sometime in early 2015, Muchli moved to the ridges, very close to my home, and that is where she spent her time eating live baits and walking past my home every week. She would also take shelter in 3 or 4 resort hotels in the area where vegetation was thick. One of my last encounters with Muchli was in October 2015. I heard from the forest guards entrusted to monitor her that she was in a patch of grass a few hundred meters from where I live. We walked towards her in high grass. I could see no sign of her and believed she would slip away, further away, quietly. But then, with a roar and an angry look towards us, Muchli leapt up, turned and trotted off to a nearby hill, jumping easily over an 8-foot-high wall. I was truly impressed. Here was a 19-year-old tigress who was still amazingly agile. Later that evening, I watched her walk across the hills amidst booming sambar alarm calls. Soon, she started roaring and the hills echoed with her calls. There was a half moon up in the sky, and I wished her luck on her next journey. Less than a year later, she was gone. but she will live on in the hearts of her legions of fans. 20 years is a long time to share with a tiger, and many of us will miss her sorely. She had an aura that enveloped the beholder. What can we all learn from her life? Work with a unity of purpose. Protect precious tiger turf across the country. Intensify rigorous field science. Create innovative public-private partnerships that keep our wilderness safe. Outsource areas for management and partner with local communities to minimize damage. Can we do it? Yes, but only if there is a mindset change in both bureaucrats and politicians. The time for shuffling files is over. Muchlee's passing is the end of an era, and a new generation of tiger is waiting for a new and dynamic policy that will keep them safe. And from the acknowledgements at the end of the book, one of the key players in Ranthambhore's success story was Vasundhara Raje, the present Chief Minister of Rajasthan. I did not know her well, thanks to my sister, Malvika. I met her in 1991-92, and she played a vital role when the first poaching scandal blew up in Ranthambore. Vasundhara Raje arranged for me to meet the then Chief Minister of Rajasthan, Bhairon Singh Shekhawat, and did this on several occasions in order to find solutions to the crisis. In fact, in 1992, I was invited to address a meeting of senior bureaucrats in the Chief Minister's office in Jaipur to find solutions to secure Ranthambhore's future. At the turn of the century, when Vasundhara Raje herself was Chief Minister, she created an empowered committee to deal with the second crisis that took over Sariska Tiger Reserve and Ranthambore. During both her tenures, she has played an essential role in taking direct decisions and the correct decisions at the right time, where wildlife conservation is concerned. She still believes in keeping tigers safe. As Chief Minister today, she has created a standing committee to monitor and implement innovative decisions. God alone knows what would have happened without her timely actions and immediate responses.
Ladies and gentlemen, if some of you know me, you know that I'm not prone to praise politicians or do it based on fact. I never speak something which is not true. So I welcome you to the next few minutes because I believe Rajasthan is the tiger capital of India. I'm going 10 stages further, and I'm going to tell you how. We have 3 tiger reserves, one Mukundra, which is the recently declared one. It has no tigers, but we are trying to protect the habitat and come out with new innovative ideas. We have Sariska, which had all its tigers poached, but now repopulated by Ranthambore's tigers, and we have Ranthambore. Ranthambore, in the last 30 years, has shown tigers to 3 to 5 million Indians and foreigners across the world. There is no record like this anywhere in India, anywhere in the world. It is a place that attracts the world to it, and that's why the success, and we have a lot of people in the central government from different parties always saying success of Project Tiger. The success of Project Tiger came only because of Ranthambore's success. Ranthambore showed the world 80% of its tigers. That success is what everyone bathes in. They sometimes forget it, and I remind them of it. But Ranthambore is the key and is the umbrella in which Project Tiger grew and evolved. We bathe in its glory. This book is the best of Ranthambore's tigers that I have experienced. I've put it all down. There's a chapter on different tigers, and they are as individualistic as members of my family or my friends. They're as different, because tigers work differently, think differently, and behave differently even with their cubs. It is absolutely 100% true that in the last 25 years, the key player, the key politician, and I met many chief ministers. I don't know how many ministers of environment and forest I worked with, and I know how closely I worked with 2 prime ministers. The key player is Vasundhara Raje. I go one step further. If I trace the lineage of some of the tigers in the 25 years, the children and grandchildren of those tigers who are living today owe their survival to her decision-making in the nick of time. And it was in the nick of time. I explain that in my book. Without those decisions, without empowering a task force, without creating standing committees, without acting to create a dialogue between those who work with tigers and those who rule the state, there would have been real misfortune for the tigers of Ranthambore. As I said in my book, God alone knows what would have happened without her interventions. I ask her because she is the right person and the only person to release such a book, to release the book, and after she's done that, she will address the audience, I hope, on tigers.
So, very good afternoon to you, friends. And it's a pleasure to be here to introduce to you Valmik ji's book. Through no better person actually doing the reading than his wife. And I must tell you that this is the culmination of 40 years of work, Valu. And he gave me this book not so long ago. And under normal circumstances, by now I should have finished reading it. Therefore, I was surprised when you were so kind to me. I have to tell you that I didn't do anything that I thought was special or spectacular. I just did what I thought would be right, because this is an animal that we have lived with through our lives. Actually, whether it was Gwalior, whether it was Dholpur where I got married, or whether it was coming to Rajasthan here, this has been the thread that has run through it. And the connection with the tiger has been consistent right the way through it. So for me, if the tiger is healthy, I believe the ecosystem is healthy. And it's people like you all who have actually focused attention on this beautiful beast and brought it to the world's attention. And I remember when I first came to government, there was a huge scandal brewing at that time. We'd just taken over. So many tigers were getting killed, and there was this very famous personality by the name of, what is it? Sansarchan. And I mean, it was known right across the forest world. And I remember that we all set out to catch him. And we did break the back of those poachers. And I believe that was the first nail in their coffin. It was not just the first nail in their coffin, it was also the beginning of the tigers actually freeing them from this. Because the forest people were frightened. The poachers were all-encompassing. And once we broke the nexus, we were actually able to get away from it and provide some sort of safety to the tigers. I remember also at that time, if you remember, when we all talked about that time we had the empowered committee. We talked about bringing tigers to Siriska where there were no tigers. And of course, there was a lot of people who wanted to give, as always, there are people who want to give good advice. And there were many people who told us that you can't take tigers there because they're related to each other, they will not breed, they will not be healthy, and lots of things came up. But after taking expert advice, we believed that it was important to send some tigers there. We put some tigers there, and today, I think that was what, 2007? 2007. In 2007, we relocated them, and I'm delighted to tell you that there are now 14 tigers in Siriska, which is a huge achievement. I'm really, really happy for that. Of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's still a lot of work to be done. I believe there are still areas which we need to free up so that tiger movement becomes easier. Mukundra is the next place, as Mr. Thapar told us just now. We are creating the habitat, working to see that there is a prey base, organizing it completely before we actually take the tigers there. But between Mukundra and Siriska, and of course the queen of the forest is Ranthambore, where all the tigers are. And I have to tell you that this is a park which has been the major success story for all of us. And of course I didn't know that when you said 5 million, of course I didn't know the figure at the time. But when you think of it like that, it's a huge achievement that this park has actually been able to achieve. And for that, I say people like yourselves, people who are interested in Ranthambore, and people from the department who have actually made a huge effort to see that this valuable asset of ours remains comfortable and well looked after. But this cannot happen if we don't have people living side by side, communities that are actually aware of the tiger, that are not in conflict with the tiger. A lot of the deaths of the tigers occurred because there was a conflict and people wouldn't talk about who the poachers were. But today, by making life easier for them, by asking them not to go into the forest to cut, but giving them free gas connections, and not just giving them free gas connections, but giving them free refills, we have, at least in some places, made it sure that people will not go into the forest to cut wood, and therefore will not come into conflict with the tigers when they move around. Now, how does conservation tourism flourish? So we have to make sure that science actually becomes the bedrock for all kinds of decision making. A visitor does come with a certain amount of expectation, and that need not actually restrict the sighting of the tiger, but as he said just a little while ago, you also can't allow them to be roaming about 6 on a motorcycle, bumping into tigresses, and expecting them to be as gentle as that particular one was. Under normal circumstances, if you came nose to nose with a tigress, 100 to 1 sheer irritation, she would have given that motorcycle a swipe. That family would have definitely fallen off that motorcycle, and there would be lightning-like response within the departments and everywhere else that there was a tiger who actually attacked people, which was not the case. So it's very important that even those people who go within the park have to understand what they should expect from the tiger. And vice versa. I mean, if you go into the forest, you know that it is the domain of the tiger, and it should be left to that. So we're looking to see now youngsters, and we have started an intern program here in Rajasthan where youngsters are going to join up, and the forest department are both going to be brought together to do some skilling about how to face animals, how to look at conservation, and how to actually talk about the tiger. I believe that this internship program will help us in the field of conservation. And Rajasthan is not just about tigers. I will just want to say here, it's also giving you great opportunities just now to look at leopards and some arid zone wetlands, and of course some of the fauna of the desert. And I'm happy to tell you that we have been able to make some leeway with the great Indian bustard. It's a very big thing for us, where it's small gains, but even those small gains make a lot of difference to a species which might just become completely extinct in time to come. So, with the securing of these habitats, we will continue to do our bit. We are also looking to citizenry, local communities, travel and tourism, industry, the guides, the trackers, and the tourists to participate in these programs, to learn about each other, and so that we can give off our best there. This also can be in many forms and include lowering individual and institutional carbon footprints, which is something that we talk about incessantly. Basically, improve some kind of ethical tourism that is disturbing to animals and to the bird life, and work with government to spread the message of conservation to every corner of the state. And if that happens, then of course the state benefits, but along with that, so does the country. I will once again like to tell you that this is something, if this survives, we survive. We are linked with our animals and our species. If the tiger survives this, we will also survive it. And I think therefore it's important to each one of our lives, and particularly for us in Rajasthan, that this is an area where we all give off our best and give time, read about it, understand it, and allow our children to learn more about them. I want to thank Valmiki ji, because he has consistently written about the tigers. He has again and again worried, irritated, harassed, hassled, gently talked. I mean, when you see that approaching you, then it's very difficult to be gently talked to, but generally, he's managed to get the message across pretty strongly that the tiger deserves to be protected. And to him, we owe a huge thanks, because he's one of those in the front line putting up this fight. And sometimes we call it a losing fight, but putting up a huge fight to see that this species remains with us as long as we can help it. The tiger is important to us, and we all have a responsibility to get it to survive. Please go and look at them while you're here in Rajasthan. I'm sure you'll be able to make a quick trip to Ranthambore. Have a look at these beautiful and wonderful beasts. They make your heart soar when you look at them. So help us to help them and to keep them going, because they are beautiful and they mean that we've been successful. If we're able to get even some of these tigers to survive, if we're able to populate our forests with them, if we're able to protect them, then we know that we've taken a big step in the right direction. Thank you, Sanjna, for that terrific reading, because what Valu has done in that book is actually make personalities of these tigers. And Machli, for example, who lived for 20 years, became a legend for all of us. But I do remember that at the time when she was becoming weaker and weaker, and this is something that we've argued about, she was becoming weaker and being sidelined, the amount of males that came from abroad. You have to keep her alive, you have to feed her. And you know, in environment, we are all told that there are no pets. And whatever, you see it happening in front of you, you are not to go out to disturb that wildlife, because it leads from birth to death, has a cycle which cannot be disturbed by us. But then, of course, there was such a lot of pressure. I think the forest department decided that we had to start feeding her. She was fed, but I don't think that is going to be passed on to any other tiger. This was one huge exception. And as he said, a gentle giant who passed and who will always be remembered. Again, thank you, Valu. That was a lovely book. And thank you for being so nice to me. I should have read it earlier, that I would have known that you'd written something about me. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you, Valu.
Thank you so much, Chief Minister. Valmik, thank you. And Valmik will be signing books over in the little bookstore over there. Okay. So please, if you would like to order a copy of the book and have it signed, head over that way. We start our next session at 2:30, the sellout, with Paul Beattie. So please may I remind you that during sessions, please keep your phones on silent. Please take litter with you, and please have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy this wonderful festival. Don't forget to join the Twitter conversation, and we'll see you 2:30. Thank you.